So I was playing Pokemon Soul Silver, as one does, and I got up to Claire's gym. Claire is the 8th and final gym leader in Johto, and her Pokemon are at an average level of 39. This is in contrast to the 3 previous gym leaders who had Pokemon averaging 30, 32, and 32. Gyms 5, 6, and 7 are so close in terms of levels because you're meant to do them in any order you wish. As for the 4th gym, Morty's average Pokemon level is only 22, although all of his Pokemon are weak to Psychic, largely unable to hurt normal types, and the game gives you a normal type with a strong Psychic type move very early on. The actual next challenge down is Whitney, averaging level 18 Pokemon. The jump in levels from Gym 3 to 5, 6, and 7 is not too different in terms of levels from the jump to 8. Okay, when I put the numbers like this, it actually does look kind of bad, but Whitney to Chuck is not actually that bad. The cannon fodder will help. The thing about Johto after the 3rd or 4th gym is that as you go from location to location, your Pokemon just don't really get the experience they need to match up against the levels of Pokemon owned by gym leaders. Before that point, you could naturally encounter so many trainers and wild Pokemon that you could just not worry about training. Going forward though, most routes don't have too much grass, and the single water route has encounters so frequently that you're going to need repels to keep your sanity. Most wild Pokemon are also only around level 20. The trainers are not much better, and not quickly repeatable, but at least trainer battles provide 50% more experience. Going from Whitney to Chuck is a big jump in levels compared to previous ones, but it could be worse. You might wonder, wouldn't it make sense for wild Pokemon in this part of the game to be level 30 as well? No. That would be bad for 2 reasons. One, it would make the Pokemon owned by gym leaders less special. Gym leaders are supposed to be good trainers. They should definitely have Pokemon that are stronger than nearby wild Pokemon. Otherwise, the implication would be that they, don't train their Pokemon. Secondly, if you had access to Pokemon that high of a level at that point in the game, it would become far too easy to train Pokemon up above the levels of gym leaders, which we all know is cheap and lame. Remember when I said it could be worse? Well, 3 badges later, it's worse. Assuming you're training your Pokemon to the averages of every gym leader, we're trying to go from level 32 to 39. That doesn't sound bad, but Mahogany Town over to Blackthorn City is a much smaller trek than what became available after beating Morty. Trainer battles, once again, are not going to be enough. Not just because there are so few, but because Pokemon take longer to level up the higher their level is. We've got to find some good wild Pokemon to beat down. Well, here it is. The highest level repeatable encounter before acquiring the 8th gym badge is a level 50 Magikarp, and it's a 1% encounter. You're better off catching it and evolving it into Gyarados. Well, disregarding that, there's level 36 Tentacruel on Route 32 when surfing. Despite the lower level, this is actually way more valuable than the level 50 Magikarp. When the game calculates how much experience to give for defeating a Pokemon, there's more to it than just levels. Equally important is a hidden stat called the base experience yield. The formula for experience has changed several times across Pokemon generations, but the core of it is the same. When a Pokemon is defeated, the amount of experience it gives is its level times its base experience yield. After that, it gets divided by a certain number. In Gen 4, this number is 7, but in some generations it's 5. From there, it will be multiplied and divided by several less important factors. Magikarp's base experience yield, or BAY, sure, is 20, the worst BAY ever. Tentacruel's BAY is 205. To show you just how good 205 is, I made a graph of the distribution of BAYs in every Pokemon that exists in Generation 4. Here's Tentacruel. Remember that these 2 variables are equally important, as in KOing a level 36 Pokemon with a BAY of 205 is as valuable as KOing a level 205 Pokemon with a BAY of 36. Before factoring in the level scaling of later generations. So to cut to the chase, KOing a level 36 Tentacruel will net you 1054 experience, which is about 7.5 times the level 50 Magikarp. This Tentacruel is still a problem though, because it's also a 1% encounter. One option is repels. If your lead Pokemon is above level 25 and below level 36, you'll only encounter these level 36 Tentacruel. But since this is a 1% encounter, you're still only going to encounter it on 1% of the steps where you would get an encounter. You won't actually encounter the Tentacruel any more often than you would without a repel. This is at least sort of nice since you wouldn't have to waste time on the other encounters, but repels cost money. You may wonder, what about the move Sweet Scent to force an encounter while a repel is active? Nope, Sweet Scent will ignore the level restrictions set by repels. This is not a suitable way to train. Let's eliminate all the 1% encounters. Finally, on Route 44, we can surf to find Poliwag and Poliwhirl both up to level 30. This seems good, but we're not considering bays. Poliwhirl's bay is 131, which is good, but Poliwag's is only 77, and Poliwag make up 90% of this water's encounter table. You could of course just run away from every Poliwag you encounter, but is it really worth doing so? Is it really worth sitting through all the encounter animations just to run away? Is it worth the brainpower you have to devote to actually looking if you encountered a Poliwag or Poliwhirl to make sure you don't accidentally run away from a Poliwhirl like an idiot? You can decide for yourself, but my answer was no. So, a recap of the dilemma. We're more or less only bound to encounter Pokemon who are level 20 to 25 at best. Our Pokemon are only around level 30, and in order for the battle with Claire to be a fair fight, we need to train up to around level 40. We will not be able to access any Pokemon who would give us more experience until after we defeat Claire, as that is when we gain the ability to traverse waterfalls. Logic. Finding the location at which to most quickly train our Pokemon is not a simple task. Every location in the game has up to 3 relevant methods of encountering wild Pokemon: walking in tall grass, or walking anywhere in the case of caves, surfing, and the good rod. Of course we have the old rod as well, but it will universally give worse encounters than the good rod. We need to find an encounter table that has a good mix of bays, level ranges, and encounter odds. Also, some encounter tables will change based on certain factors like the time of day. Most people would just settle for training in Ice Path, but you see, I am the person who, when I missed one trigger when flying through a Titanfall 2 level, made a trigger display so I could know where it was to get to a certain part of the level faster. I nearly wrote code to simulate all 12,321 possible directions an energy ball could go in when making my Half-Life 2 Episode 1 No Mouse Movement video, so I could be sure that the location I was standing in could actually have an energy ball bounce in the desired way. You should know by now, when I am mildly inconvenienced, I program. Apparently all of my project names have to be extremely on-the-nose combinations of 2 words, so this project's name was EXP Squeeze. Okay. But how the hell are we going to do this? It was not very long into searching on Google that I came across some random GitHub repo that mentioned PokeAPI, one of apparently many different databases out there containing data about Pokemon games. Is it the best? I don't know, but it was the first suitable candidate I saw. Now, for my particular goal of finding the best possible encounter table out of every single one available in Soul Silver, I'd need to use PokeAPI's API to request a ton of data at once. I have no real experience using online APIs, but I'm smart enough to know that if you make a program that requests 2 regions worth of encounter tables at once, the maintainers of that API are probably not going to like you. Fortunately, they offer their entire database on GitHub for download, so I never had to make a single API request. The download consisted of 14,000 JSON files totaling 484 megabytes. Holy shit. That's not just Soul Silver encounter tables though. It's also many other types of data and for many other Pokemon games as well. If you're not familiar with the JSON file format, I would not blame you. JSON is a well-documented, standardized file format like PNG or WebM. You will basically never see it unless you're using something more technical like PokeAPI, but it's quite commonly used to store data about, well, basically anything. It is a hell of a lot simpler than inventing a unique data format for every kind of data point you want to store. Of course, the benefits are all lost if you're an idiot clown like me. When starting this project, I thought it would be really complicated learning how to use a JSON parser, which is a thing that parses a JSON file for easier use. So I decided to just directly read the JSON files for the encounter tables like they were any old text file. After all, this is just a small project. I don't really need a JSON parser, do I? Do I? Do I? Okay, this is a terrible idea. I'd say about 50% of the work on the project was figuring out how to get the encounter data out of the JSON files, or at least it felt like it. I think we're due for a talk about how encounter tables work. You may think an encounter table is just the Wild West. Maybe you could have 100 Pokemon in one table, each with a 1% chance. Maybe you could have one Pokemon with a 97% chance and another with a 3% chance. Sorry, but no. Encounter tables strictly have 12 slots. Every slot is filled with something, even if you can't encounter 12 different Pokemon in that area. The slots each have a specific chance value assigned to them. 2 of them take up 20% of the encounter table each, 4 of them are 10%, 2 of them are 5%, 2 of them are 4%, and 2 of them are 1%. Every slot has a minimum and maximum level that the Pokemon in question can be found at. As far as I can see, the RNG for what level to pick when generating a wild encounter weighs all levels in the range equally. A slot can have the same Pokemon as another slot to create probabilities of other amounts, such as having both a 20 and 10% slot to get a 30% encounter rate. While 2 slots may have the same Pokemon, they can still have different level ranges, which is how you get situations where a Pokemon could be level 24 or 26, but not 25. As I said before, there are several things that can modify encounter tables. The time of day, season, mass outbreaks, the PokeRadar. In the case of the games for the DS, what Gen 3 game you have inserted in the Game Boy slot, and what radio station you're playing. Most places have other encounters beyond the initial 12 which are tied to these factors. Take mass outbreaks for instance. When a mass outbreak is happening, certain slots get replaced with some other encounters. Each factor that replaces one slot with another has its own set of slots that is programmed to replace. Fortunately, PokeAPI does note which encounters have certain conditions that need to be met for the given slot to be used in the table. Just like how it notes which encounters need a mass outbreak to be active, it also notes the encounters that the mass outbreak replaces as needing a mass outbreak to not be active. And this is the case for every one of the conditions mentioned earlier. This is really awesome because this means we can ask the user which conditions they would like to apply as opposed to being forced to simply ignore these extra encounters. One final thing we need to ask the user about, the game. This is really important because many encounter tables differ between games. Also, while my use for the project was only Soul Silver, PokeAPI has encounter data for a decent chunk of the Pokemon franchise, so I took the time to make EXP Squeeze work with those games too. Unfortunately, no encounter data was available for spin-offs, Generations 8 and 9, Pokemon Green, or the Let's Go games. Also, the Generation 6 data section is smaller than what I would expect, but I've never played a Gen 6 game, so I can't really judge it. Now, the last thing we need is the bays of every Pokemon in Generations 1 to 7. Unfortunately, this is a weak spot for PokeAPI as it seems to only have the bays of Pokemon as they are in Generation 9. Fortunately, Bulbapedia's got us covered. After copying their tables and fixing them up a bit, we're ready to do the math. Since an encounter slot can have a range of levels, we calculate the average level. This is pretty straightforward. We just add up the values of every level in the range and then divide by the number of levels. Now we do the experience formula. We take the Pokemon's bay, multiply it by the average level, and then divide it by either 7 or 5 depending on the game as was discussed earlier. Then we multiply it by the slot's percent chance and then divide by 100. We do that for every slot and add up the numbers, and that number is an encounter table's average experience per encounter. So now comes the big moment. Before, we were looking at surfing on Route 44 as potentially the best area to train. Does our guess hold up? The best encounter table for gaining experience before the 8th badge according to EXP Squeeze is the grass on Route 44. To confirm that my math was correct, I went to Route 44 and KO'd 50 wild Pokemon. The math says we should get an average of 452. My actual average experience was 457. That's pretty close. Of course, it's not going to be right on the money. But then I started looking around at other places. Apparently, Route 27 had better encounters than Victory Road, and before defeating Team Rocket, your best available place to train was Route 43? This seemed odd. What if I made a mistake and Route 44 was just a fluke? I looked into Route 43 and, well, Route 44 was not a fluke, but I did make an error. On Route 43, Pidgeotto can be found during the day and morning. This means there's one Pidgeotto slot marked as only being in the day and one only being in the morning. Most of Pidgeotto's slots also happen to be marked as requiring the radio to not be tuned to one of the special radio stations. My code was written in such a way that was allowing the encounter to be considered valid when only one condition was met, so you could have, say, the time be morning and then it wouldn't matter what the radio's status was. This meant we would be adding up numbers for more than 12 slots, which is obviously not meant to happen. I fixed that bug, and to prevent similar errors in the future, I added a failsafe to make sure the condition encounter table percentages always added up to 100%, no more no less. After adding that failsafe, it became apparent to me that the numbers were coming back wrong for many other tables, some of them my fault, but some being PokeAPIs. The surfing table for Vermilion City has a mass outbreak encounter for Wingull, but it was not noted that Wingull was swarm only, and it was not noted which slots Wingull replaces. This meant the encounter table percentages added up to 160%. From my perspective, this was not a big deal. I just had to send a bug report to PokeAPI, and in the meantime, I simply added a note in the program that the encounter table is faulty. Similar problems showed up in 2 other encounter tables. Unfortunately, this problem seems to exist on a much larger scale for Generation 7. In every encounter table I checked, the condition data for night and day exclusive encounters was not present, so that's bad. Well, with all that settled, let's try that again. Route 44 is still on top at 452, then the bottom half of Ice Path in second and the top half in third. Route 43 was now much lower down where it probably should be. Our real best place to train before defeating Team Rocket was Cliff Cave. Of course, I wanted to be sure the numbers were right this time, so I went there to do another 50 encounters. Our expected average for Cliff Cave at night was 375. Our actual average was 363. I wasn't quite satisfied with that, so I did another round of 50 and got 408. This is a very volatile encounter table. It's a mix of low bays and high bays with hardly anything in between. But hey, the average of those averages is 385, which is pretty close. And I know you'll ask, so here's the best area to level up in the entire game. Mount Silver Cave's second floor at any time of day, but with the very best being at night with 1071 average experience. You don't just have to take my word for it, by the way. You can download EXP Squeeze for yourself, and you can use it for other games too, and you can see the numbers for every location. I have it linked below. Was this whole project worth it? I don't know. Ice Path was already probably the place most people were going to go since it's right next to Blackthorn City. The grass on Route 44 is only a bit better. A better question is, why is Johto like this? Why are there no level 30 Pokemon outside of some very rare encounters? After doing 150 wild encounters for this project, my Pokemon still are not up to level 40. Here's the team, by the way. I know, very original. And before you ask about Lapras, I'm recording this video after I've already beat Claire, and Lapras was brought onto the team specifically because of her. After you get the 8th badge, you get access to much better training areas, like Victory Road's 710 average experience. And while that is the best area once you've earned the 8th gym badge, there are still other areas that open up with significantly higher average experience. Route 47 grass at night, which is not accessible without Waterfall, has a level 40 Pokemon and gives 579 average experience. Route 27 grass at night gives 572 average experience. Pay close attention to that. I'm sure you know that you can in fact access Route 27 before the 8th badge. You just have to surf to the west in Newbark Town, but to access the grass you have to go through Tojo Falls, which again requires Waterfall. You also now have access to the top level of Mount Mortar, which gives 544 average experience. Earlier in this video I was going to mention that you can find the level 31 Kingler by smashing rocks in Cliff Cave, but actually it turns out those rocks just don't appear until you get the National Dex. One thing is clear, the level curve is very much intentional. Tucking away all these much better encounters just out of reach could not be an accident. They clearly wanted to make training take a long time. In hindsight, it feels really obvious. They wanted you to lean less on training and more on type advantages and more niche strategies. Even the gym leaders are mostly ordered so that their type is weak to the previous gym's type. Let me say it again, 150 encounters and I didn't even get my Pokemon up to level 40. HGSS wants you to have a plan, not levels. That sounds all sweet and suchin', but like, maybe just don't do that. Sentencing players to a terrible grind if they don't want to use an ice or dragon type is pretty lame. It is true that you should have to put in work if you don't want to adapt your team to the opponent, but this grind is so long it just isn't worth doing. Just get an ice type. We're probably getting Johto remakes next, so like, can we get some level 30s, Game Freak? So yeah, that's the end of the video, I guess. It'd be really funny if somebody in the comments let me know that someone else already did this exact thing like 5 years ago. Actually, I shouldn't say that because now people are just going to mess with me. I should cut that part out of the video. Hey, stop recording. I'm going to cut that part out. What? Hello? Okay, this is awkward and I'm just going to leave now.